AmCham is an association that is meant to promote relations, whether they be cultural or business relations, between the United States and Gibraltar. AmCham is not political, and whoever wins this election, AmCham would be more than honored to work with the next inhabitant of the Oval Office in the White House. So thank you for letting me point that out.
So to begin with, the US presidential election, just how important is it?
It's extremely important. It's extremely important. If you think about, you have to put it in historical context. You have to think about some of the people who have sat in that Oval Office: Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, Harry Truman, John F. Kennedy. I mean, there have been great people who have sat in that office and have had a huge impact on the world. Mm-hmm. And they are able to do that for a number of reasons. Obviously, there's an economic might to the United States, but there are also constitutional reasons. The United States Constitution gives its executive branch a great deal more power than most nations do. The President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The President has the power to veto legislation, to propose legislation. So there's a very strong system of checks and balances between the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch, which is the President. But even within those checks and balances, the power of the President is very, very strong. As we've just seen, the President has the power to appoint Supreme Court justices. Mm-hmm. So the character and the identity of the person who lives in the White House has important repercussions, not only on the United States, but indeed on the entire world.
Now, you mentioned the US as a superpower, and you've also touched on some of the previous presidents over there. Is the US the same superpower that it once was?
You know, the French say, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. So the more it changes, the more it stays the same. So no, we're not the same power, but no one is the same power. The world has shifted. The world paradigm has shifted. Nevertheless, I think the United States still has a great deal of power and a good number of years in which to exercise that power and to benefit from that power for itself and, I dare say, for the world.
And bringing that link a bit closer to home, it does have an impact on the entire world, as you say. What impact does this presidential election have on Gibraltar?
It's very hard to say at this point, but if you look at some of the names I mentioned in the past, some of those did have a direct impact on Gibraltar. I mean, Eisenhower was very important for us here in Gibraltar, as he spent time here during World War II. A number of presidents have been here. So how exactly that will impact, it's hard to say. Then the Democrats generally tend to be more interested in international relations, and they might try to promote the relationship with the United Kingdom and Gibraltar more. But of course, that the Republicans who might have somewhat less of an interest in the international relations will still honor and respect the shoulder-to-shoulder relationship that the United States has with the United Kingdom and therefore with Gibraltar. So I wouldn't be overly concerned as to which of the candidates takes up residence in the White House for Gibraltar's purposes. I think that in either case, the relationship with the UK and with Gibraltar will be and will remain quite strong.
So how could this impact things going forward when it comes to Brexit?
I don't want to say he won't be politically particularly important, because obviously whatever happens generally does have to have some sort of consultation with the great leaders of the world, not only the United States. I think that will really be between the United Kingdom and the EU.
Even a potential trade deal between the US and the UK?
Yes. That is something that when the time comes, they will take stock of what is available and what is on the table, and the Good Friday agreements are something that no one wants to It's not just a Biden or it's not a Biden or a Trump thing. Nobody wants to get rid of that. That's one of the areas in the world there where common sense and good sense have really prevailed, and people have managed to put their differences aside, happily for everyone involved.
And what of a potential trade deal with the UK then somehow being accessible to Gibraltar too?
Well, that's certainly something that AmCham will do everything it can to try to promote. It's something that we have discussed at somewhat senior levels, and we're certainly going to tap into our friends and contacts in Washington to try to make that happen. Obviously, it's too soon to say, but that is certainly something we're going to be keeping our eye on like a hawk.
Donald Trump has questioned the legitimacy of this election. There's even been talk of taking it to court. Now, if there's no clear winner anytime soon, and it does take days, perhaps even weeks, as has been mentioned, what will that uncertainty do for global markets?
That will most certainly not be good for business and for the markets. It will create huge volatility in the markets. It will run its course, but the next few days and weeks could potentially be very unsettling. What I'm particularly concerned of is public uprisings in the United States. The United States of today is not the United States where I grew up. It used to be that people would argue on issues. In 2018, I had the privilege of going to a talk where Barack Obama spoke, and someone asked him, what's the difference between politics of today and 20 years ago? And he said that 20 years ago people argued on issues, but they were able to respect each other aside from that. Today, there's no communication. There is the people who live in as he put it, and I didn't, as he put it, someone who lives in a world where they read the New York Times simply doesn't have the language and the tools of communication, lives in a completely different world to someone who listens to Fox News, for example. And that's particularly disappointing, because communication is the way you can solve a lot of issues. But if you don't have the means of communication, if you don't speak the same language, then you have to figure out another way to communicate, and that's very difficult. The arguments that have gone on in the United States in the last few months have been very unsettling and very disappointing. And I certainly hope that the next leader is able to help the United States overcome those differences.
Now we're talking about the US presidential election, but perhaps that's an issue that's more global than this.
Communication. It's important to understand what the other person thinks, and to try to argue with the idea, not to demonize the other person. By doing that, there's more of a chance of coming out to an effective and satisfactory conclusion than just having a lot of people hating each other. There's no way that's going to be good for anyone in the world. Unfortunately, though, that is the way things have been going certainly for the last few years. And I sincerely hope that trend can be stopped or modified or improved.
And so how do we fix that?
Argue about ideas. Respect your opponent.
But how do you get people to do that if they're not doing it right now?
So I believe that you can't change other people, but you can try to change yourself. And so so everyone can. We all have arguments on different issues, and so if we can try to respect our opponents and disagree with them on the points that we disagree with them, people will see that, and people will take note for their own next argument. And that is something that, thankfully, I don't have a whole lot of arguments here, but whenever I do, I certainly try to do that.